Tonight, Ottawa's exit plan to get trapped and terrified Canadians out of the Middle East.
I think the biggest part is just like the unknown.
And what the Prime Minister said today when asked about the prospect of Canada participating militarily. The new country targeted in the widening conflict, and why this kind of attack at sea hasn't happened in decades.
They are toast, and they know it.
Plus, why prices at the pumps are still rising when there's a surplus of oil. And the big bang over BC.
Felt a large boom. It sounded like an explosion.
What lit up the night sky above Vancouver?
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening. The complex operation to get Canadians out of the chaos in the Middle East is now underway tonight. Most of those requests coming from the United Arab Emirates, where charter flights are expected to leave within 72 hours. The stakes in the war were raised significantly today after an American sub destroyed an Iranian Navy ship, the first American torpedo attack of an enemy ship since the Second World War. And Iran's retaliation went further today, now targeting Turkey, a NATO member. The alliance's air defenses shooting down an Iranian missile Turkey says entered its airspace. The Prime Minister, who initially said it was not envisioned Canada would participate militarily, said this from Australia today.
One can never categorically rule out participation. We will stand by our allies when it makes sense. There's a distinction between the offensive actions that were taken and are being taken by the United States and Israel, that were taken by them without consultation with Canada, with other allies, and we're not party to those actions. But we will always defend Canadians. We will always stand by and defend our allies when called upon.
CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver starts us off tonight with the exit plan for Canadians trying to leave.
For the last 6 weeks, Glenn Williams has traveled the world. He thought his layover in Kuwait would only be for a few days. Then the conflict began, and instead of flying home Sunday, he found himself stranded.
We do hear the sirens a lot during the day, but I mean, it's overall fairly calm. I can't say it's been crazy. I think the biggest part is just like the unknown. We're not sure when the airspace will reopen.
Williams is one of more than 106,000 Canadians currently registered in the region, and among 2,035 who have asked for help getting home. So far, Global Affairs says it has reserved 200 seats over the next 3 days on Middle East Airlines flights from Beirut. Qatar Airways has arranged buses to Saudi Arabia for 200 Canadians with existing tickets. Israel is running buses to Egypt, where commercial flights are still available. And in the UAE, Canadian charter flights are being organized in the next few days, as are reserved seats for Canadians on certain commercial flights.
This charter is contingent upon receiving the necessary approvals from the government of the UAE to use their airspace, which we have already requested.
The United Kingdom and Australia have already started evacuation flights out of Oman.
If there is space on their planes and there are Canadians who want to leave the region, then they will offer that space up, and we will do the same.
It would be nice to get back home.
Until an option becomes available to him, Williams says he's trying to stay patient.
There's not much you can do. I think you just got to sit back and relax and go with the flow.
One country with a more complicated exit is Iran. Canada does not have diplomatic ties, so the government says ground transportation cannot be safely arranged. Instead, diplomatic staff have been positioned at border crossings with Iran. Omar.
All right, Annie, thank you. Many in Iran are fleeing to neighboring Turkey, seeking safety. But today it became the regime's newest target, forcing NATO to scramble into action. CTV's Adrian Gobriel has more from Istanbul on the widening war.
Pulled from the waters along the southern coast of Turkey, this is the remains of a NATO interceptor missile that knocked an Iranian attack out of the sky. Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan saying his country is in close consultation with NATO allies while warning Iran a similar incident cannot occur again. In Iran, thunderous explosions echoed across the besieged nation as Israeli forces confirm they've begun a 10th wave of strikes, with U.S. forces hitting deeper into the country. In the 5 days since this war broke out, more than 1,000 people have been killed in Iran, according to a U.S.-based human rights organization. In Lebanon, smoldering debris sends smoke billowing into the sky in Beirut, where the IDF has vowed to uproot Iranian-backed Hezbollah after it launched strikes into Israel.
The numbers are increasing. We have more than 80,000 people, including 24,000 children, forcibly displaced in Lebanon. Many were still displaced since the previous escalation.
This video shared by the U.S. Department of Defense showing the moment a U.S. submarine sank an Iranian warship. The bodies of some 80 sailors reported dead at sea, located by rescuers along the southern coast of Sri Lanka. With 3 other NATO nations, Greece, Britain, and France, sending naval and Air Force personnel to Cyprus following Iranian drone attacks there, this expanding conflict has reached new shores. More than 100,000 Canadian citizens and permanent residents in the Middle East have registered with Global Affairs Canada. CTV News visited the Canadian consulate in Istanbul to try and ask questions on behalf of Canadians stuck in the midst of this conflict. Passport in hand, security inside this building refused to allow us to enter the consulate. Our request to interview Canada's ambassador to Turkey was also denied.
This is Adrian Gober with CTV National News.
One official speaking on background tells CTV News that a range of options are being looked at to help evacuate Canadians by land and air, while assisting those in Iran remains the most difficult, without an embassy inside that country. With war on the horizon, a sunset call to prayer preaches peace in a region and a world where tonight it's in very short supply.
The attempted missile strike here in Turkey makes this the 11th country targeted by Iran since this war began. Adrian Gober, CTV News, Istanbul.
Washington says it will strike deeper into Iran. The U.S. Secretary of War saying, quote, "We have only just begun," while also revealing details of an attack on the Iranian Navy in international waters that killed at least 87 sailors. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin on the military impact and the political pushback.
The U.S. military torpedoed and sank an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean, something not done to an enemy ship since the Second World War. The U.S. says it has struck or destroyed more than 20 Iranian ships, and the Secretary of War couldn't help but boast.
The Iranian Navy rests at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Combat ineffective, decimated, destroyed, defeated, pick your adjective. They are toast, and they know it.
Pete Hegseth declared this war is just getting started, with more fighter jets arriving in the region. The Pentagon claims it will have complete control over Iranian airspace soon.
We will now begin to expand inland, striking progressively deeper into Iranian territory and creating additional freedom of maneuver for U.S. forces.
The conflict was supposed to last just a few days. President Donald Trump says it could be longer, giving his assessment how it's going.
Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15. Their leadership is just rapidly going. Everybody that seems to want to be a leader, they end up dead.
And with shifting reasons why the president decided to strike Iran now, he justified it this way.
And I think if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and give us a shot if that was possible.
Not good enough for some key Trump supporters. It's not exactly a MAGA mutiny, but serious questions about the end game.
It's pretty clear that we're not going to gain anything more. And how do we know that? Because no one has explained what we're there to gain.
Tonight, Republicans voted down an effort to block President Trump from taking further military action against Iran without getting congressional approval. The first vote on this war that has already claimed nearly 1,000 lives. Omar?
A toll that keeps rising. Joy Malbin in Washington. The conflict in the Middle East continues to impact what Canadians are paying at the pumps. CTV's Heather Wright is tracking how much more drivers are spending and how much higher prices could go.
Sticker shock at the pump, with prices soaring across the country overnight.
I expect inflation at 3.5% by the end of the year.
According to GasBuddy.com, drivers in BC and PEI are paying the most, an average of 161.9 cents a litre in BC and 154.2 cents a litre in PEI. Quebec is seeing prices around $1.52 per litre, Ontario averaging $1.36.6 a litre, while the lowest prices are in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta.
The longer this conflict goes, the greater the likelihood the price will reach levels that are extraordinarily uncomfortable for most Canadians.
20% of all oil traded passes through the Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf, which Iran controls. Tanker traffic has been disrupted while energy facilities throughout the region have been attacked. While gas prices across the West are rising, China is feeling the pain much more acutely as they import 70% of their energy from the Persian Gulf. And some believe the U.S.-led strikes in Iran may also be a way to target Beijing ahead of President Trump's visit there later this month.
The fact that gas prices for me are a little bit higher while my competitor simply doesn't have gas is maybe another consideration.
Despite being an energy-rich nation, experts say Canadians are unlikely to see any relief at the pumps as efforts to scale up oil and gas production cannot be done overnight. It's something that doesn't sit well with Luka Mihalik.
They should have done something 10 years ago, not today. Today, what can you do?
There are concerns the conflict in the Middle East will have an impact similar to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine 4 years ago, when the price of a barrel of oil jumped by 20%. There is more oil at play in this conflict, but analysts say it all depends on how long the war lasts. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
And CTV's chief financial correspondent Amanda Lang joins me now. Amanda, on the one hand, we're seeing oil prices surge because of the war. On the other hand, before this conflict, we were talking about a global glut. So if there is excess supply out there, why are we seeing the kind of spikes we're seeing?
Omar, that's the right question to ask. Just yesterday, the World Bank put out a new forecast for the price of oil lower based on excess supply. That was very much the story at the end of last year. You might recall the world was awash with oil and the price would be coming down. It didn't really happen, and part of the reason there's some speculation is that this very conflict was being priced in. People were worried about tension in the Middle East. But the truth of the matter is this particular tension shouldn't have an immediate impact on what happens to our oil prices. Canadians, of course, get oil from the U.S. or refined products, some from the East. Only 10% comes from the Middle East, that's Saudi Arabia. So a bottleneck in the Strait of Hormuz has some impact. But we are, of course, affected by the global price. And that price may well be being affected by speculation and uncertainty. And it's the uncertainty, especially about the length of this conflict, that might keep oil prices high. At the end of the day, there's still that fundamental underpinning that we have a lot of oil and some structural changes to electric vehicles, for instance. That means demand will fall. Won't matter if traders are more focused on the uncertainty factor. As one trader put it, the price is really being set more by headlines than by facts. And that means for Canadians, the price at the pump and, of course, any kind of attending inflationary impact might just be something we have to live with. Omar?
All right, we'll see if any of this plays into the Bank of Canada's next rate decision 2 weeks from today. Amanda, thanks for this. One factor that will impact that decision is the U.S.-Canada trade war. A big win for American businesses who were paying import tariffs. The U.S. Supreme Court struck down last month. Today, a federal judge ordered U.S. Customs and Border Protection to issue refunds for the levies collected. The U.S. federal government could ultimately be on the hook for $175 billion. Mark Carney announced new trade and defense agreements with Australia during a trip that also included an address to Parliament, whereas CTV's Abigail Beeman tells us he called Canada and Australia strategic cousins.
A warm welcome down under.
The distance between our two nations has never mattered less, and the closeness of our values has never mattered more.
In the Parliament of our shared Westminster system, Prime Minister Mark Carney highlighted many ways Australia and Canada are similar.
Two proud democracies, the true north and the land down under.
Carney spoke of coming to reaffirm the alliance as global architecture is breaking down in consecutive crises and gave many nods to his well-received Davos speech.
Every agreement signed, every coalition deepened, every commitment made is variable geometry in practice.
And he announced Australia is signing on to the G7 Critical Minerals Alliance. Plus, there are new partnerships on AI and defense.
We're actively exploring new opportunities to protect our vast territories.
Canadian soldiers will begin training on the new radar Canada is buying from Australia later this year.
The world will always be driven by great powers, but it can also be shaped by middle powers that trust each other and act with speed and purpose.
After wrapping up his second Australian stop here in Canberra, Mark Carney heads to Tokyo for the final leg of his Indo-Pacific trip. Omar?
All right, Abigail Beeman in the Australian capital. Abigail, thank you. Coming up. Why thousands of protesters marched to Nova Scotia's legislature. One woman is dead and 3 police officers were sent to hospital in Montreal, allegedly after being exposed to toxic gas. The officers were called to an apartment this morning where a tenant was being evicted. One of them fell unconscious while 2 others felt dizzy. They also found a 36-year-old woman who was pronounced dead at the scene. The fire department's hazmat team believes the apartment likely contained high levels of phosphine, a colorless, flammable chemical. A community in Eastern Ontario voicing its displeasure tonight to a proposed high-speed rail line from Toronto to Quebec City that could run right through local farmland.
It would end our ability to use whatever part of the land is on the other side of that line. And so it would probably end our farming career.
The 7-stop 1,000-kilometer line could be completed by 2040. One path it could take near the town of Perth, Ontario, potentially leading to the expropriation of land in the area. The Crown Corporation behind the rail line says owners of any land claimed would be fairly compensated.
Please don't get reversed. I'm going to have to start off my education, my career in adulthood, and thousands of dollars of debt.
And in Toronto, hundreds marched to the legislature protesting Ontario's cuts to student assistance. Doug Ford's government says the cuts were needed to rebalance a post-secondary system that had become unsustainable. Well, cuts to arts and culture programs in Nova Scotia sparked a massive protest today, with thousands taking to the streets. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth with the message demonstrators had for the Premier.
A jam-packed downtown core in Halifax. Thousands of protesters marching on the legislature with a unified message.
We're not accepting this.
The Nova Scotia government is cutting $130 million in funding that supports arts and culture programs. 12 museums across the province are closing. Premier Tim Houston faced a chorus of boos while leaving the legislature. Opposition leaders say the province's cultural fabric is being defunded, and they want Premier Houston to clarify the rationale behind the cuts.
I think he's going to have to explain the answer to that question because there is no reason.
It's definitely not the place to start looking for cost savings, and it's very small cost savings compared to the big deficit.
A deficit that has reached $1.2 billion. According to Premier Houston, that's why he put these programs on the chopping block.
This is to protect healthcare, to protect education.
Not a good enough reason, says this protester.
We need to be investing in culture and arts. It's the thing that makes our community grow.
Amazing power.
These protesters say the cuts will directly impact 22,000 jobs in Nova Scotia supported by arts programs. The province also canceled the Publishers Assistance Program, supporting first-time authors.
I would like to have a local book published one day, but it's looking bleak.
Protester Cindy Stone is not giving up the fight. She hopes her voice is heard and the province reverses the cuts to arts and culture programs in Nova Scotia. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
Still ahead. The young Blue Jays fan catching attention in spring training. Someone in the city of Toronto has won a $75 million jackpot, and players are being urged to check their tickets. The Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation says the winning Lotto Max ticket for yesterday's draw was sold somewhere in the city, and as of this morning, the winner had yet to claim the prize. And a young Blue Jays fan gave up his prize and stole hearts on the stands during spring training.
Goes full.
A foul ball sent a Detroit Tigers fan over the seats in a failed attempt to catch it. But watch as this little Jays fan picks up the ball and instead of hanging on to it, he hands it over to the man who was about to walk away disappointed. A kid with a lot of heart. Clearly, his parents raised him well. Still ahead, what caused this big, bright blast that lit up the sky over Vancouver. People in Vancouver are reflecting on the mysterious bright flash and loud boom seen and heard all over the city last night. It became the talk of the town today. So what exactly was it? CTV's Sinjin Alexander explains.
When a guest of the supersonic variety suddenly drops in on Metro Vancouver, this is what it sounds like. Just after 9 o'clock Tuesday, the night sky lit up. Then, nothing. Not for a couple of minutes. Until...
Felt a large boom. It sounded like an explosion.
Searched the house, upstairs, downstairs. Didn't know, looked outside.
The public, puzzled, called the police, not sure if there'd been an accident, an earthquake.
The sound waves from the explosion were actually recorded by our seismographs.
For such a big bang, somehow, some didn't hear a thing.
Not till I got home and talked to my husband. He said, boy, you should have heard this boom last night.
Who heard it?
I did.
And who didn't?
Did not.
Now, BC's surprise visitor was a meteoroid, roughly 10 to 100 centimeters large. Big enough, say astronomers, to be considered a fireball, or what's known as a bolide.
They come in with so much energy, hitting the atmosphere, the denser parts of the atmosphere causes the rock to just break apart.
They begin to vaporize, melt, and dump an astounding amount of energy.
We just heard like a big boom, and then like our front door was shaking.
You know, when you feel a large boom and it just reverberates in your body.
Meteors are constantly bombarding the Earth, so it's not that unusual. The treat is that it was big enough that we got to see it and hear it as far away as Washington State. Now, it's possible some pieces survived and may have landed around Whistler or Pemberton.
However, it's a very mountainous area, and I don't expect any pieces to be recovered.
It was very nice this morning to figure out what that sound was.
Anyone who missed it needn't worry. Another cosmic guest will drop by soon enough. We just won't know when. Sinjin Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
Fascinating, and that's a snapshot of this Wednesday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast. Canada's #1 newscast for excellence in journalism.
We begin tonight with breaking news.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina, winner of the Canadian Screen Award for Best National Newscast. Weeknights at 11. Watch live on Crave.